I was going through this whole massive kind of whirlwind of emotions and didn't really know what I was experiencing at the time. But essentially, I lost my job, and I reached out to everybody I knew and said, "Hey, I just heard the news." And funnily enough, I got the similar sort of response from everybody I knew at that time, and they all said, "Well, we're really sorry to hear that news, but I hope that everything works out for you. I'm sure everything will be fine. Just apply for more jobs." I was like, well, that's such great advice. Why didn't I think of that? But that was my first encounter of realizing that the people I'm hanging around with, they just don't have access to opportunities. They just don't have access to resources and people and ideas and knowledge and the answers that I'm looking for. At that sort of time when you're in desperation mode, you want somebody to kind of reach out and kind of hold your hand and point you in the right direction, and maybe say, hey, maybe if you go there, somebody will look after you, or I have a connection in this place and they're looking for somebody where you might be a good fit. Nothing happened. Nothing like that happened for me, and so I was kind of left on my own. But that's when I realized, what, I need to hang around different people. Right. I need to hang around different people, right? I need to hang around people who have access to the opportunities, have answers to the questions that I'm looking for. And that was my first encounter with this world of networking, because I went online and started joining these sort of, personal development, self-help groups on Facebook, met lots of amazing people and thought, hey, it'll be cool to share these conversations with other people because I'm learning so much myself. I love to share it with others. Started like a YouTube show, kind of like this, interviewing people. And that started to scale. And I met some, top experts in their fields, top influencers, top thought leaders in the world, started interviewing them. And I was like, wow, all I know are fractions. And here I am, talking to all these amazing people. How did that happen? And, I was going over it in my mind anyway, but certainly when COVID hit, that was the trigger moment. That was like, right, I need to put this together in a system. I need to put this together in a way that somebody else who might be on this journey of seeking out answers and seeking out opportunities that they're looking for, they can have the same results that I've managed to achieve. And that was the birth of my book, TurboCharged Networking. And so that is the background story.
Oh, I love that. And how you turned a negative experience into a positive. At the time, it didn't feel too good, but it forced you out of your comfort zone. And as a storytelling coach, I love the whole setup, the bright sunny day, the unusual day in England. You're going about your normal day life, and all of a sudden you get thrust into this new situation that pushes you out of your comfort zone. Classic storytelling. All right, let's jump into the 3 questions about networking that will help people expand their business network. The first question is, what's the biggest networking challenge that you're seeing in today's environment?
That's a good question, Michael. And what I would say is that there is some research around this. One of my friends, Rachel Randolph, actually organized a survey on LinkedIn, and she collected some data around this. What are the big problems that people are facing right now, especially post-COVID, right? Mm-hmm. What is it that people are going through right now in terms of what challenges they're facing, what problems they're having in terms of networking and building relationships. And we specifically found that 29% of the people who responded said that they are suffering from social anxiety. People have been cut off from the rest of the world. They've been cut off from their friends, from their families. And so they were suddenly forced to isolate themselves and contain themselves in their home environments for a very long period of time. And that definitely had a negative impact on their confidence. That definitely had a negative impact on their social skills, definitely had a negative impact on their ability to just be in an uncomfortable environment and be okay with it, like still being comfortable, in their own skin. So, social anxiety, 29% of the people responded to the survey said that was the big issue. And the next one was actually maintaining relationships. And so 34% of the people who responded to the survey said maintaining relationships was their biggest challenge. Now, this is quite interesting, right? That's really, really interesting, because most of the time when we go out and we go online, or we look at any sort of online courses, or YouTube videos, or any of the books that we read on the subject of getting to know people, etc., they all focus on how to get in front of people.
Yeah.
right? And funnily enough, only 10% of the people highlighted that as their main problem, right? That wasn't the main problem. How to
Okay.
get in front of customers, how to get in front of clients, how to get in front of other people. No, that wasn't the problem. The real problems were social anxiety and maintaining relationships over a long period of time. And the final one that we had, just to make it 100%, was the 26% of the people said that they just suffered from burnout, right? Like they're just running at, 10,000 miles an hour. And because of work and family commitments, they just suffered from burnout. So that made it 100%. Okay. But funnily enough, nearly 2/3 of the people, either their main problem was social anxiety, or the main problem they had was maintaining relationships over an extended period of time.
That's really interesting because it makes me realize that it wasn't hard to get in front of people in the pandemic. All you had to do is turn your computer on, get on a Zoom call.
Exactly.
But it's a whole different dynamic. I'm not in front of you physically. I can't sense what's going on in the conversation. So I only have your face and your voice to go on. And I've been teaching people this about speaking. Traditional speaking, you stand in front of an audience, all 5 of your senses are engaged. 3 of those are shut down when you're online. So now your sight and your hearing are supposed to do all the work of all 5 senses. Same thing in building relationship. And I can see where that would be an issue where, okay, I see people, but I don't trust this new medium. It's like we have to relearn relationship building, isn't it?
Absolutely. And building relationships over a screen is a very different experience to actually being in person. So like you say, when you're public speaking, you're standing in front of an audience, you have a very different experience, but you could be given the exact same presentation over a screen, and it's an entirely different experience that you have, and also that your audience have, right? You almost have to find different ways to connect with them, right? Like, getting them to engage in the group chat, getting them to actually go into breakout rooms. Like there's so many other things that we have to then integrate into our presentations, into our public speaking, into our, sort of relationship building skills in order to be essentially in order to operate at the same level that we were operating at before the pandemic.
Yeah, excellent points. And it again makes me think about in the speaking world, I'm telling people, if you think you're going to go back out there now and stand in front of a group and just speak at them, and they're going to passively sit there, I think those days are gone. Now, the better speakers were doing this before the pandemic, but we've conditioned people the last 2 years now to be involved, to answer questions, to go to a chat box, to play games with them. And that's going to help building the relationship also between speaker and audience, just like it will managers and their teams. It's going to be very different when we go back to presenting in person most of the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So our second question is, why is networking important for business owners, speakers, and trainers? And I know that may sound like an obvious answer to the person watching, or an obvious question to the person watching this, but it's such a ubiquitous term and it's thrown out so casually now. I don't think half the time people know why they're going to networking events.
Yes, absolutely. And I think networking has to be very, very intentional. It has to be very purposeful, and it has to be very focused. Right? You cannot just show up and hope for the best, right? I mean, let's take a scenario that we're kind of all familiar with. Let's take the dating scene, right? Like, so this, you're going out and looking for somebody to bring into your life, and so you go on a date. You can't just randomly show up unprepared and hope for the best, right? You need to have a plan. You need to have some sort of idea of where you want to go, what you're going to do with the conversation, what happens after, how do you start, what's going to be the follow-up after you actually finish your date, etc. You got to have some sort of plan there. Otherwise, you can't, it's just a disaster. It's just chaos. Right? You can't just, rely on randomness of nature in order to, get you to the successful outcome you're looking for. What you need to do is you need to have a plan. You need to be focused. You need to be purposeful, and you need to be intentional. So that's the first thing. And why it's important for speakers and business owners and trainers. Well, networking is something, like you say, it's used very commonly. It's a term that's thrown around a lot, but we really need to be clear on what that means. I believe networking is about building human connection. Okay, observe, I didn't say sales. I didn't say getting more clients. I didn't say get more numbers. I didn't say, just speak at people. It has to be focused, intentional, and purposeful, right? And it's about building human connection. At the end of the day, the one thing that will outlast all pandemics, all natural disasters, okay, all sorts of other problems that can creep up is a human connection, is your relationships. You really need to focus on building a long-term relationship, not a short-term gain thing. Okay, we get in touch and then we have this thing like right now, right? We got in touch, we met each other, and then that somehow led to this. I mean, our purpose was not to let's get Tallal onto this call thing and then interview him, right? That was not the purpose of our initial meeting.
No,
but
it wasn't.
somehow it ended up here.
Yeah.
Right. And then from here, now we're actually starting to invest in the relationship. We're spending more time together, and I'm here serving your audience. And then what hopefully will happen is that over time, we're going to find ways to exchange value. We're going to find ways to serve each other. We're going to find ways to make sure that we stay in touch and we carry on building that relationship. But the very first thing that needs to happen is you need to come from a place of care. You need to come from a place of care. Care, value, and service. That's the message of my book. Care, value, service. You need to come from a place of care. Then you will be able to add value and serve the people, which will then build a human connection, and that will serve you in the long term rather than actually trying to do a short-term gain.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and it makes me think that in the old days, whether that was 2 years ago or 20, we were taught, go to an event and see how many names you can capture, see how many people you can meet. It's got me thinking, Tallal, what if we just shifted that whole focus to asking one question? How can I provide value to this group?
Yeah.
And how do you do that? You go in there and ask questions. Don't tell them about yourself. If they ask, and then this is a whole other discussion for another live stream interview, but how you do that has to change also. But provide value by asking questions. How can you serve others right up front? Not as a manipulation tool, but just to show, hey, I've got value. Happy to help.
Happy to help. Exactly. And I call that the magic question in my book. And the magic question is phrased as, what are you focused on right now? And where do you need help?
Yeah. Love that. So immediately you're showing, hey, I have an interest in you. I'm not here just to rack up numbers or pitch you on something.
Yeah, love exactly. That. Yeah. So that's the question. But I'll quickly just mention one more thing regarding this. In terms of business owner, trainers, and people who are speakers, why is networking important? I believe that networking allows you to access other spheres of influence. You have your own sphere of influence, right? Which in my book, I define as up to 3 levels of separation from you. So for example, in my case, my sphere of influence consists of my friends and family. That's level 1. Level 2 would be their friends and family. And level 3 would be the friends and family of people from level 2. Right? So that extends quite far out. And to be honest, I actually don't know everybody, all the way up to 3 levels of separation from myself. I don't know everybody who's in that sphere of influence. But from research, we know that your sphere of influence extends to up to 3 levels of separation from yourself. And we even know from research that your levels of success, your health outcomes, your habits, your values, and your beliefs are all subconsciously influenced by the people who are in your sphere of influence. So actually, what you think are your own core beliefs, what you think are your own thoughts, what you think are your own values, and what you believe is, that's the level of success I've managed to achieve or didn't achieve, or that's, what my health and fitness looks like, and this is, who I am, your identity, it actually might not be entirely yours.
Oh, that's a unique insight I haven't thought about before, is that you're affected by the people around you.
Yes.
What you just said reminded me of a speech I heard 15 years ago. This gentleman was talking about networking in the financial world. And he told us, you are not as far away from the president of the United States or the Pope or Michael Jordan as you think. Well, jump ahead about 5-6 years. I got a speech coaching client. Her best friend was the wife of the Speaker of the House of the United States, third most powerful person in the country, which literally put me 2 levels away from the president of the United States.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I would have had easy access to him. I get that. But knowing her, she knew the Speaker of the House, friends with him, who knew the president.
Mm.
And if people look very carefully at their networks, there's a joke here in the States called 7 degrees of 7 degrees of separation with Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
It's like, we all know Kevin Bacon's 7 levels. I don't think it's 7. It's probably 3, maybe 4.
Yeah.
If you really look hard at who you know and who they know. So I love that. And what you're promoting here, Tallal, to me is it's going to take a lot less time than you think to get to the people you'd like to be in front of.
Exactly. If you're purposeful, if you're intentional, if you're focused, and you're able to access other spheres of influence, you actually get access to what you're looking for really quite quickly, whether that is people, resources, opportunities, knowledge, ideas, whether that is technology, money, whatever it is you're looking for, you get access to that really quickly, because essentially whatever you want already exists out there, just in a different sphere of influence.
Yeah. And all this is in your book, I know, and I highly recommend your book. There's one, it makes me think of another book I've read recently called Who Not How. If you're familiar with that, it's similar concepts. The basic concept is we spend so much time worrying about the how, we should be focusing on the who can help us get our goals. We're going to succeed at a much higher level.
For sure.
This is awesome insight. And that leads us to our third question, which is, what is the biggest mistake that people make around networking?
Yes. What is the biggest mistake people make around networking? Michael, can you guess what that is?
I just think they go there just wanting to tell people who they are and what they do and shortcut the relationship process.
Yes, I think a lot of times you're right. It's the fact that people have a very short-term vision. They have a short-term vision. They don't think in long-term, right? And just looking at it in a long-term, sort of lens, with a long-term lens, actually lends you lots of different insights into how you can build a relationship over time, right? I think that for most people, they're looking for a quick fix. They're looking for a quick response, a quick answer, right? Mm-hmm. They're trying to figure out the shortcut.
Right.
But the thing is, if you focused on human connection, then really there is no shortcut, right? Mm-hmm. Because that connection will take as long as it would take to build, and you need to be patient with that, right? We all, hear about the fact that, patience is a virtue. And in this case, I think it definitely pays out. Maybe patience is not a virtue when you're running late and you're stuck in a traffic jam. I get that, but in this case, patience is a virtue, because essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to connect your soul to another human being's soul. You're trying to build a relationship. That's what a relationship is, right? You're trying to connect your soul to somebody else. You're trying to connect your identity to somebody else, right? And you really want to get to know them as a person, because, Michael, at the end of the day, we're made of so much more than what we wear, what we look like, right? And what necessarily comes out of our mouths. We're made up of so many hopes and dreams and pains and hurts and heartbreaks and ambitions, and all the times we cried, and all the times when we felt lonely, and all the times when we were crushed, and all the times when we were just completely, torn apart and didn't know where to pick our pieces up. Like, we're made up of so much more, each and every single one of us. And the biggest mistake people make in networking is to just take what's at face value, and they don't try to go deeper. They don't try to connect with the other person, the real person that is behind the clothes, the skin, the words, You want to connect deeply with another person. You want to connect your soul to their soul. You want to build a human connection. That's what I believe is the purpose of networking. And it happens naturally. If you think about it, it actually, you have, infinite amount of, opportunities that just occur naturally. For example, before this, I was just talking to my wife and my kids, right? That's a networking opportunity because I have the choice to actually consciously try and make a deposit in those relationships, or I can make a withdrawal. Every single time I talk to my wife or my kids, I have that option. I can either make a deposit or I can make a withdrawal. The key to this, Michael, is to make sure there are more deposits than there are withdrawals.
I have always enjoyed that metaphor for relationships, and you just reinforced it, that every so-called, quote, little thing we do adds to that bank account, and every little thing we take away hurts it. If you take away enough, eventually you drain the bank account, you've got a problem.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I actually wrote because I write a weekly article on LinkedIn, and I wrote an article specifically along this, and it was I believe titled "How to Make Your Relationships Flow." And I think that's the thing. A lot of the times people isolate networking to one area: business, sales, right? Trying to get more numbers, trying to get more clients. Yeah. I want to get more contacts so I can get in front of more people and promote my products and promote my services, etc., etc., etc. When in fact, they're all relationships. And the thing with relationships is that they just flow naturally, just like water, they flow naturally. However, if you try and contain the flow of water, the water starts to stagnate.
Yes.
And that's what happens. It turns toxic. That's what happens with networking. That's why it's got such a negative connotation attached to it. It's the fact that we've tried to isolate relationships, which is essentially just what we call networking. We try to isolate that to business, to sales, to try and get more clients, to get in front of more people, to try and get more money, like all those things. And when you just try and like stop that flow, it's going to turn toxic.
That's a fantastic metaphor. It also makes me think, I studied a little bit of economics in college, and a basic concept we learned was that when you stop the money flow, you stop the economy. And that's what a recession is. The flow of money is slowing down. Money flowing creates great wealth across all spectrums.
Absolutely.
If we don't stop it through the various tools that governments use. I could talk to you for hours about this. I mean, I love what you just said about on this third question. It reminds me when I'm speech coaching and especially storytelling, and I'm working with people on their stories. I find that when I go deeper with them and ask questions to help unpack why they had a certain experience, who taught them, that's when I find the real gold. And I feel closer to them, and they certainly make a deeper connection with audiences. So what you said about networking, relationships going beneath the skin and the words, it applies in all forms of communication, be it networking, storytelling, and speaking. Well, I can't thank you enough for being with us today and giving just a slight bit of your wisdom. Now, if you're watching and you'd like to take a deeper dive, Tallal has at least three ways you can reach him. You can go to turbochargednetworking@gmail.com. Is that your best email address?
That's the best email to address to reach out to me, after hearing this podcast, for sure, because that's where I keep an eye on those things.
Okay. And you can also get connected with Tallal. I'm going to put these under the video on the show notes, so you'll have that. And you can visit him at turbochargednetworking.com. And again, remind us how we can get your book.
Well, if people want to go to TurboChargedNetworking.com, they'll see some options there. It's also available on Amazon in UK, US, and Canada, so they can definitely get it from there too.
Okay, sounds great. Well, if you would like to talk to me about any of your storytelling, I'd be happy to do that. I'm going to put my link up here to contact me. Specifically, I have a resource called 52 Storytelling Tips. That is a weekly 5-minute audio where you can it will just give you one tip. The idea, over a year's time, you build one skill on top of another. So I'll put that below the show notes. You can reach out to me at infone.co, speaking CPR. And as I always like to point out, coming to a live stream near you next week, join me with my friend Ray Engen. Ray is a comedian, former writer for The Tonight Show, and now he helps business leaders become more effective through the use of humor. So join us for that. You'll see the notices coming out next week. Tallal, again, I can't thank you enough for being with me. I know it's late where you are. Go there and kind of wind down your day. Have a good weekend. And I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. And I just hope that what I shared actually served you and your audience.
It certainly does. I know it will. I look forward to the comments that people have. So thanks again.
Thank you, Michael.